And we're joined now from Toronto by Ruth Markel. Welcome back to the CJN, to the North Star podcast.
So glad to be here. I'm actually very pleased to be back in Canada after almost 3 weeks at the trial of Donna Adelson in Tallahassee, Florida. So good to see you too.
Well, I know we should just address the eyeglasses in the room, the elephant in the room. You had a terrible fall just while you were attending the trial. Do you want to tell our listeners and viewers
Sure,
why you're wearing
sure. I'm
sunglasses?
wearing I'm wearing sunglasses because otherwise I look like a raccoon. And I fell in the parking lot in the hotel about 3 days into the trial. And unfortunately, I even had to lose a little time there. I had to go to the Tallahassee Memorial Hospital, but I'm really okay. The effect is the bruising, and the long term should be a very good outcome. So thank you for mentioning it, and I hope you're not too distracted by the sunglasses.
Well, we wish you a speedy recovery and a refuah shlema complete, a
Thanks.
complete recovery. Of course, this was on top of the trauma that you already had to experience with your family. Your daughter was there. Your former husband, Dan's father, was with you in the trial. Were there other people with you from the family and supporters who were there?
Yes, we actually had quite a few. First of all, Shelley had a couple of friends. Then my brother-in-law from Montreal came, and we had the younger generation this year. That was the big news for them to come. So Shelley's youngest daughter and my niece came from Montreal as well. And this is a good experience for them. Some of them are thinking about social work. Some of them are thinking about law. So I guess maybe from a very intergenerational difficulty might be some positive outcome.
Well, speaking of positive outcomes, so this is number 5 conviction in the long journey since your son was murdered. Um, I'd like to ask, first of all, I don't know what to say. Do you say congratulations in this case? What does one say?
Think it's
You can't.
congratulations, but
Yeah.
you could talk about it is a positive outcome. So, there's no congratulations because we still miss Dan. I mean, Danny's gone now 11 years, and there is always that loss and always, the respect for the victim, the direct victim. We are homicide survivors, and he's really the real victim here. And you can forget this story has a lot of glitz and glory, a lot of, sort of periphery things that you can almost forget that somebody has been murdered. And I don't want that ever to happen in the midst of all the news. It's, had tremendous outpouring all over the world before and now for sure. So I think just, never to forget the purpose of why we have to tell this story.
Well, I know that you released the written version of your victim impact statement. And also, people who may have followed the trial, they can find it on video. We will play some excerpts from it shortly. So the audience who may not have followed it live. But I wanted to know, who were you actually speaking to? Was this to the family, to the judge? Who was it for?
The victim impact statement actually is a formality, but believe it or not, they actually let the jury go first. So you would think that it doesn't sway the jury, but you would think that the jury would be present. So the victim impact statement really is for the judge. Because there still is something called sentencing. And in the sentencing, although Donna did get life, there's two other crimes. So one is solicitation and one is conspiracy. So the judge has still an option whether he gives, now I'm getting legal technical, but she could either get 30 years for each one or consecutive. So the purpose is really the sentencing objective of why we do a victim impact statement.
You're mentioning some words in that statement. You use the word that she's a curse on your family. This is Donna Adelson. Um, you wrote this yourself, I assume, with
Yes,
input
I
from
did. But
everybody?
that is, let me just tell you about the word. That comes from one of the calls. So we have had, I don't want to use the word privilege, but we all have been listening to some of the calls that John Adelson had with Charlie Adelson on the night of his conviction. And she was on a call that she knew was public. all the jail calls are recorded, and it starts out with "You are on a public recording," but those were her words. I quoted her words. She said, after she was so upset and describing his conviction, she said, "Our family is cursed." And I'm not saying your family is cursed. You cursed your family. Those were the words, the meaning.
How was it for you sitting in your family in the courtroom when some horribly descriptive, very mean things were said about Danny in terms of how his ex-wife and her mother-in-law called him some very bad things as part of the whole, why they didn't get along. Hearing some of the things, like they called him a sexually transmitted disease, it's horrible. How does that sit with you and your family?
Well, I think I want to go back a step because I think that there were horrible names, and I just want to bridge one kind of thing that's we have in our culture right now. There is a lot of divorce. There is a lot of estrangement. There is a lot of brainwashing kids, and that's going out in what we would call healthy or normal families, if you see what I'm saying. But nobody commits murder, so I think that it's a caution to all of us really when we get too over excited about some of the terrible things in our life, and you don't go to murder, but you do say these things sometimes. And therefore what I want to kind of bring home, let's call it, is that it's a terrible feeling to say that I've also heard it from other people when they're in this crazy process of going through something contentious. And they say in the States, I don't know in Canada, that there's actually more murders at the family court than there are when they have them. They don't have them like as much, but the point is because of the disputes. So it's a terrible thing, and yet it's something that I kind of want to caution from.
So in other words, Loishin Hara can be, we were speaking listen 24 hours after the assassination of Charlie Kirk, the podcaster. Now I know it's a whole different case, but it's all about, words comes and then actions happen, and it's a consequence. It can be a consequence of hate speech, right?
Right, and violent murder. I think this is a difference. All these family issues that were just identified and those terrible words, but the fact is that if it ends in murder, it's a violent death, and the family, as homicide survivors, it's not normal loss. So the long-term impacts of actually going through a murder experience is totally, totally devastating. And to do the criminal system, we're now on our fourth time in crime. So you're in a criminal system and in a trial. So you're actually revisiting all the time the original murder. And that's very harmful and very, very devastating.
And how did you also, when your ex-husband Dan's father spoke and made even like a Jewish blessing go into a Jewish curse with the
Right.
ad 120, or can you tell our listeners about that? What he wished for Donna Abelson?
Well, I think the problem is part of both of our presentations on the victim impact statements talked about all the children. So we have two grandchildren that are left behind, moved from state to state now because of the fact that they have the Adelson name, and the Adelson, I'll say the word here, curse. And as a result of that, they have no normal lives. And their uncle has been, was part of his statement, and in mine, a different place. Part of it is they have an uncle who's now in jail and convicted, and their grandmother who actually brought them up for quite a few years, and she's convicted. So from the offshoot of losing Dan, the grandchildren ourselves, to all of the other people who have lost their children, Sigfredo Garcia, who's the shooter, Catherine with the liaison. There's two parents who have children who have, no parents as a result of this story. Even Charlie Adelson has a little boy, and he won't see him for the rest of his life. So I think that was part of where Phil was really driving home, the parts of the destruction of so many lives just from this woman, Donna Adelson, because, as they say in all of the journal, all of the media, she wanted to relocate her grandchildren to South Florida from Tallahassee. So for her, desire, which was so intense, and she was, really obsessed with it and so forth, all these families are now devastated.
So what happens to you and your family now? You have time until the sentencing. Do we know when that is gonna happen
The
for
sentencing
Donna?
will yes, we don't have the exact date. There's a case management date that was just set up for October 14th. The sentencing date should, I believe, will be before November of 2025, but I'm really not 100% sure.
Mhm. And so your victim impact statement, you don't have to repeat it. That's it.
We
That's
have an option,
you can do it
because
again.
what happened was, hereafter, sometimes the full sentencing goes after, when the verdict came, but the defense team has an opportunity to do, like a post-sentencing, investigation, and it's just an opportunity for them to have more, maybe they have something that they wanna add, nothing related to our victim impact statement. It doesn't change the verdict, but they have opportunity. In fact, we heard already from the probation officer who's working, with the defense team to give them records. So it's a record-keeping process that the defense team has an opportunity, to utilize as part. It's a formal process.
So they utilize another brief from the family or the one you gave already, just to
We
be clear.
gave that. I don't think we needed more, but we could give if there was other evidence, or they might ask us still. So the idea is that they have a chance to kind of make a statement when sentencing does happen. And the sentencing, the next real time when we'll have this conference, we do have the chance to repeat our victim impact statements. I don't think we're going to go to Tallahassee, but sometimes we'll do it on Zoom. I did the first one in the court. Shelley and Phil did different ones, and they did it on Zoom as part of the sentencing. So we'll see what the judge really wants. But they have the record of the victim impact statement.
So you've been back home for a few days since the 3 weeks in Tallahassee, and now the Jewish holidays are coming. Dan's birthday is coming, October 9th. What steps or what kind of, I guess, what happens after these, after sentencing? You've been through it, as you said, 4 times. So how do you heal yourself? Besides your eyes, how do you recover,
Yeah.
from this?
Well, it doesn't take, it takes time. I mean, the one thing I think that just for people to understand, when you achieve a certain level of equilibrium and comfort, in what I'll call a normal post period of a trial, but that takes a long time. And then in our case, we really are continuously involved in the for Donna before her trial. There was so many hearings, which was a hard trial. Her trial was hard, not because only it was Donna Adelson, but prior to that, they wanted a bond hearing. Then she had problems with the inmates. So for almost 6 months before her trial, you have all this agitation, and you have to go to these conferences. And then, of course, the public, we have a lot of, I have to say at the same time, we're very grateful to the media. So all anybody of your followers, the podcasts are out there, the print is out there, social media is out there, digital is out there. So this is where it doesn't get quiet. Like, so normally there's a bit of a quiet period. I'm not sure final sentencing, how quiet it'll be. When it gets a little quiet, you have a chance to re-engage in your normal activities. But at this stage, I would still say we're still either not coming off the trial, and truthfully, probably still inundated with media requests and a lot of follow-up. And so some of it is positive, and some of it is you're carrying the burden still.
You were mentioning your grandchildren. I know that our listeners will be aware because you've talked about it with us before about the law that Florida passed of a grandparent estrangement. Since the last few years, have you been at all in contact with your grandchildren, Ben and Lincoln?
Yes,
And
we
how is
have.
that
So what
going?
happened after the Markel Act was passed in Florida, there was a slight window that opened up, and we did see the children. There were different, very, very brief family visits. It's all through Wendy's devices. The boys are now 16 and almost 15, and we have no direct contact with them, meaning we don't have any chance to email. Everything is through Wendy's devices and contact stuff. And at that level, I'll say that it's also highly choreographed. So you can be on for 15, 20 minutes on a Zoom for the birthday. And then there's it's like a director behind the scene cutting you off. It's not natural, but
Yeah,
at
it's
least
awkward, yeah.
and awkward, but they know who we are now. And I think that's probably more important than anything else. I'm an optimist type. So hopefully maybe at 20 years old, I would like them to come to Toronto and really see they're starting to ask about Dan in our conversations, which is good. And I would like them to come and see, Dan's grave, his history, his school, his family. They were here a lot, but they were preschoolers. So that's still something to hopeful to be. Hopefully, she called them sunshines. Hopefully, we'll get to see our sunshines, her sunshines. That was Donna's expression for the
Mhm,
boys.
mhm. And as far as you mentioned so much media, what is going to happen in a much bigger, maybe small screen or even big screen portrayal documentary? What's been happening in those avenues?
Well, I do really have a very interesting development with Lionsgate to do a three-part documentary. There's tremendous interest from all over the world. The family will be interviewed. This is a very big case. I mean, last week it was one of they say the biggest crime cases, and I'm sure now, unfortunately, with Harvey Kirk, it's going to take up a
Not
lot of.
Harvey Kirk. That's for older people.
Oh,
He was a
sorry. Well, what's his name? What's his name?
Anchor, Charlie Kirk.
Charlie Kirk. Sorry, you see. Yeah. So he'll. This is going to be big news. I mean, these are big, big stories, and they all, have a big time and place. But we're getting requests from every major. We already have. It's been in all of. It's been in New York Times. It's all over the world, and let it be, but let's not forget who Dan was. That's the most important, and our loss, So that's why I said at the beginning, we lost a treasure, and I think that's the most important message.
And last time I spoke to you, they were going to be doing some scholarship or event at Harvard University. Um, is that still ongoing each year now?
So what we're
And what
doing
else is
now,
happening? Yeah.
okay, so there is a new kind of a legacy project that Justice for Dan is trying to do. It can include Harvard, and I spoke at Harvard, but it probably could include Harvard. So it's for students who want to study criminal law in the same areas of interest like that Dan had. And so what's going on right now is there's some requests for papers for, I would call it scholarships and different things that will be administered through Justice for Dan. And certainly Florida State University, FSU, where Dan taught, is very, very part of the program and part of the initiative.
Okay, there was something that came out during the trial. If you have another minute, I want to bring it up to see if I can understand it. Part of the hearings, they mentioned that the dispute between Dan and Wendi that had something to do with religion. That he had
But I
three
didn't hear you. Sorry, with what?
Sorry, that had something to do there were 3 things that he had over her and control over her, and one of them was religion. Do you remember that coming out in the trial?
Sure, sure.
What does that mean? They were both Jewish, so can you
The
try to
Jewish issue
unpack
is
that for us? What was the religion aspect that she was talking about?
the Jewish factor is very big in this particular case. So what happened was when Danny and Wendi got engaged, they this is part of the contentious divorce. I mean, there is a place for this to be talked about, unfortunately. But when Danny and Wendi were engaged, they talked about the children being kept, the house would be kosher when the children were born. That was an agreement before. And the first initial years, the house was totally vegetarian. And if Danny wanted to entertain, which he did sometimes, mostly actually when we were there, He had kosher meat dishes and so forth. So there was no real conflict in terms of what they had decided pre. But when they went to daycare, now they're born, and they go to daycare, and daycare serving, hot dogs, who knows what were in them. Both Danny and Wendy, now this is an important point. Initially, they brought tofu. The daycare gave out the tofu, falafel, hot dogs, whatever. But Donna, now here's where you see her meddling. This is part of what the whole case is about. She went to the daycare and she started to tell the daycare, don't worry about it. Just give them the regular hot dogs. And the same thing when they went to soccer. Afterwards, she took them to McDonald's and she gave them cheeseburgers. So she already started to sabotage. And what then happened was one time I was even out with Dan and and the kids want to go to McDonald's. So Dan was like just a little caution, and I said, okay, McDonald's has the best milkshakes and French fries. So he caught on. And then we went and got them something elsewhere for protein or whatever. So the beginning of really the unraveling of the marriage related to the religious factor started from Donna. And then Danny did want to become not more observant. He was never like Shomer Shabbat or anything like that, but he brought the children as often as possible on a Saturday morning or a Friday night. So it wasn't so much between Dan and Wendy, it was much more Donna.
Okay, and that helps, and it's so sad to hear that the observance was part of the friction, um, and the reasoning. So the prosecutor or the associate ASA, I don't know what they call it in Canada, but the woman in red, the
Georgia Kappelman, she's great.
was asked by the journalist at the end of the trial, like, what's going to happen next? Because everyone's saying, okay, you got all of these five. What about Wendi? What about Harvey? So she said, stay tuned. What feelings do you have when you hear her say these things? And is
Well,
that something that you want?
Well, first of all, let me just say something why it becomes very significant. After Charlie's trial, when they had her in the hallway, so then she actually did say, "Stay tuned," and it turns out that Donna tried to flee a week later. So right away, they were, the Adelson, particularly Donna, was arrested trying to flee to Vietnam. So the "Stay tuned" became like the new music, from Georgia Kappelman, and I think that they will make a decision in terms of how they feel about the other parties in the family. It is a murder for hire. It is a murder where we know, and even in this last trial, there was much more that was now released, I should say, about certain communications pre and post the murder. So that this is a game of evidence. When we normally think as people who've lost somebody and so forth, you think of your loss, you think of your tragedy. But the lawyers, it's all it is evidence. Evidence is the mantra of the day. So they have to feel they have enough.
But as the grandmother, if Wendi gets convicted, let's say, I'll hypothetical, and that she goes to prison, who's going to look after the boys? Something you weigh on your mind, I assume.
It is, but you remember now, this is a different game. Like when it was preschoolers, there's a lot of they're now all 16, and similar to here, they will have a big choice. It's not, certainly I would run down and I would, try to bridge whatever I could, and it also depends about Harvey if the father is there, and Wendy has a significant boyfriend at this point. So there's a lot of factors. But the fact, really, the big picture, big picture is the boys have a decision now. And that is really where it will be. We do have a major role in the sense that we're, as a family, particularly Shelley manages some of the investments. But the point I'm making is it's no more. It's I would love to say that we'll pick them up and run away with them and so forth, but it won't happen that way. It's going to be a court issue with them, not us, with them being the major decision makers of what's going to happen to them. Sad.
It's so head spinning and tragic, and so many people are tuning in as, true crime, and they're parsing every single, they're watching it because here in Canada we can't see that, we don't have that kind of system of justice where it's all televised. But the how do you find that the interest in the States has maybe helped keep the prosecutors motivated, where maybe they would have given up? Is there
I
any?
don't
Do you
think
think that it inputs in the
it
scrutiny, the
helps, but I
public?
don't
Yeah.
think the prosecution was ever gonna give up here. It's too big a case, it's too much situated now. It's a small community, Tallahassee. So you have everybody forgetting what you see on social media and the podcasters, the pressure within the community. So he was, a very respectful professor at Florida State, but he was very well known internationally. So they never had national pressure. It's not even the pressure that we normally think about, from the media. They have everybody, the American Bar Association, a lot of international other players. Harvard is a player here, like you have a total American culture to keep the sustainability of this particular story. And Danny did a lot to keep the story alive. I mean, he contributed so much scholarly. He was a co-founder of Prof's blog, which came out before Facebook. So you have a really, wide range of just the natural support, I'll call it. And then on top of it, the story has glitz and glamour. I say that all the time because I want people to not forget that there's real substance under here. Somebody was murdered, the story has so many stories. You can't write what's gone on in fiction. And that's the sadder part, but yet this is where the media, we're very grateful to the normal media, whether it's a Dateline 2020, Law and Crime, and all of the other, types of podcasters who are there all the time, and the Canadian Jewish News. We really respect your interest and your support.
Well, I really appreciate it, and I wonder if you went to Danny's grave and told them what had happened when you came home.
I didn't get there yet, but I went before. I went before the trial, and I will. And that was one of the things I do. As that is my thing, to actually visit the cemetery frequently. I did my pre-visit before. I like to go the Jewish holidays, so I did it before Donna's trial. But I will definitely get back very soon.
And thanks again for sharing the latest with us here at the CJN.
Thank you, and it's a pleasure to be back. And hopefully there's more to come. We'll see.
Okay, thanks so much, Ruth. Bye.
Thank you.